The Perfect MMO is a label that we've given to only the most sacred of MMO. That one single game that has had such a large cultural impact on the greater genre overall, that has redefined what it means to be a massively multiplayer online role-playing game. And no, I'm not talking about visiting the Goldshire Inn or playing on the Balmung server in Final Fantasy XIV. While I would love to talk about that MMO, unfortunately, it just doesn't exist in a physical form yet. There is in fact no perfect MMO. On the contrary, there are many good MMOs, there are many great aspects of various MMOs, there are many fantastic ideas present in MMOs. Yet there is no singular MMO currently that has cemented itself so firmly within the genre that it is unequivocally regarded as the very benchmark, providing an experience that is incomparable to anything else. But just because there doesn't exist one currently, doesn't mean that there aren't some that don't come close, or more than that, that there won't be one in the future. Blue Protocol, Ashes of Creation, Arcade 2, Throne and Liberty, Riot's League MMO. Before we discuss this topic any further though, I just want to take a moment here to thank all of our incredible patrons over on Patreon. While there is no perfect MMO right now, you're all proof that perfection is achievable. Oh, and did you know that both MRSSTIX and I are over on Twitter? I promise we make only the highest quality tweets. Now, I have been playing MMOs since I was a teenager. For context, I know I don't look it, but I am actually turning 33 this December. And before you go ahead and make fun of me for being an old man, laugh all you want while you can, because you'll be here soon enough. The very first MMORPG I ever played was Tales of Pirates. It was a PvPvE MMO. The base world with Shaitan, Argent, and Icicle cities were all completely safe. While leveling, you never had to fear that other players were going to gank you. Yet every single dungeon and raid was PvPvE, meaning that there could be hundreds of players occupying public dungeons, all vying for supremacy over one another and ultimately the bosses, and subsequently their drops. This meant being in a guild was important. There was no dungeon fighter, there was no queuing solo for a group, no. You were required to be social, you were required to be active in your guild, helping out, participating in group content, group activities, because if you weren't, nobody would help you and you would not be able to progress in any form. The reason I mentioned this specific aspect of Tales of Pirates is because while there is plenty of PvP, group PvP, heck, server-wide PvP in the form of territory wars or server wars, one thing I noticed in every new MMO is a severe departure from group content. It's almost like these new developers, even existing developers like Square, are so concerned with catering to casuals that they're punishing players that are here for the massively multiplayer component of the MMO. You can see Final Fantasy XIV doing this in recent expansions. The game feels mostly like a single-player JRPG with group dungeons and raids. I know some people enjoy the trust system, being able to take NPCs into dungeons with you instead of other players, but that is at the expense of the remainder of the community. At what point did we decide that it was a good idea to fracture the player base, inhibiting players by imposing even longer queues on them, forcing them to, in turn, run with NPC parties if they don't want to wait? Look at the leveling in new MMOs, the story. Everything is so disconnected from other players. We've seen survival games like Valheim and V-Rising providing more cooperative opportunities for players than MMOs, and it is heartbreaking to see. If this isn't remedied soon, then the term MMO will likely need to be retired because it just won't be accurate anymore. Recently, I took the time to impose a simple question to my viewers. What do you think would make the perfect MMO? And the responses to this formed the basis of this entire video. Gameplay needs to be exceptional. Viewers would proceed to list what game they thought had the best combat. Black Desert, The Elder Scrolls Online, Guild Wars 2. Narrative is important. To the surprise of nobody, the vast majority of viewers noted Final Fantasy XIV, even despite Star Wars The Old Republic, Guild Wars 2 and The Secret World, all being fantastic alternatives. It needs to look next gen. While I don't necessarily know what that means, they did go on to state largely that it needed to, at the very least, look as good, if not better, than Black Desert Online. If an MMO could successfully release that fulfilled those 3 criteria, then many of my viewers would consider it to be the perfect MMO. But while I think that all 3 of those aspects are definitely important to an overall successful title, I noticed that there were several additional aspects that were absent from what I perceive to make the perfect MMO. Community. Having a friendly, welcoming, helpful community is always integral to a healthy community, outside of competitive games anyway. Communities are the core of an MMO. Toxic ones will deter new players from joining and staying. Content. MMOs created in the last decade all share one thing. The leveling experience, which can take days, even weeks at times, is so boring, it is so barren and so void of engaging, competitive, challenging content. MMOs, and even beyond MMOs, RPGs, adventure games, they're all about the journey. They're not supposed to be about what you do once you've completed your journey, at least not exclusively. Creating a leveling experience that enthralls you, that captivates you, and makes you want to take your time immersing yourself in every facet of the world. Where did this attention to detail go? I remember how much personality NPCs and zones had back in WoW, finding recurring NPCs out in the world like Fiona and her caravan, finding references to popular TV series and movies scattered around every zone. Beyond that, content needs to be regular, frequent, not a few new bosses that you can grind for the next 3 to 6 months, no. Meaningful content that you can unlock, that you can grind for, and that you can pursue over a period of time. I'm not saying disregard boss fights, they're integral to the raiding scene. I'm saying provide more than a couple boss fights, more diversity, content to do weekly out in the world that isn't a chore, that you need to group with other players to complete, and that releases every 4 to 6 weeks. Player retention is a difficult thing to balance, but more regular content and more things to do is the way to achieve it. If gacha games are somehow managing to successfully implement features like this, I don't know why MMOs can't. Class identity, class depth is important. Being able to select your own abilities to build your own character in a way that only you can. Back in Perfect World International, I played on the Sanctuary server, and I was the first Constitution Blade Master to tank Twilight Temple in place of a Barbarian. I was an unkillable machine during open world PvP and territory wars. Nobody had the build that I did, and nobody would ever beat me 1v1. Sure, after they introduced OP pay-to-win gear, that changed, as I was mostly a free player, but being given the opportunity to build your own character, to customize them extensively, is something that I find to be sorely missing in today's games. Being told, this is a paladin, they have 10 buttons, this is an AoE and this is a stun, oh and this is a heal, this is a rotation you use and this is the gear that you'll be given, is such a boring take on what could be a much more engaging system. I don't know. I've seen so many different people claiming that they want to find the perfect MMO, but they have no real idea, no grasp of what that even looks like. And admittedly, while I don't necessarily have a full, complete understanding of what I want either, I do have a vague idea. I know what I like, and I know what I need for a game to successfully retain my attention. I might never find the perfect MMO. I love WoW, I love Final Fantasy XIV, yet neither game has been able to hold my attention longer than maybe 6 weeks in the last 2 years. Then I go back to console games and working. It's depressing, I know, don't judge me. But what do you guys think? In the comments below, I want you to tell me what you believe the perfect MMO consists of. Who knows? Maybe the next big MMO developer is in the comment section right now reading your comment and implementing your idea. Now, if you're like me and you're waiting on a new MMO to play, then don't worry, I got you covered with these 2 videos on screen right now. One is featuring the most played MMOs in 2022, the MMOs everyone is currently playing, and the other is a list of some pretty sick looking new gacha games launching this month. Go ahead and check them out.